I installed a doorbell camera 2 years ago to catch package thieves. That was it. Nothing more dramatic than a $60 fix for an annoying problem. At the time, I was 28, freelancing as a graphic designer, and living alone in a small rental at the end of a cul-de-sac. My porch had already lost 2 packages that year to whoever happened to be walking through the neighborhood, and my landlord didn't care beyond telling me to buy a camera myself. For months, it did exactly what I bought it for. It caught UPS drivers, a neighbor's dog, and a kid cutting through my driveway. Nothing worth a second glance, let alone saving. I got used to the notification chime and mostly ignored it unless I was expecting something. But then, one afternoon between client emails, I opened the app and found a clip from a day I hadn't ordered anything. A delivery driver was standing at my door for 11 seconds, completely empty-handed. He wasn't scanning for a spot to leave a box like drivers usually do. He just stared dead into the lens. Then, he turned and walked back to his van, parked 2 driveways down, facing the exit like he already had his getaway planned, and drove off without knocking. My stomach dropped before I even understood why. I double-checked my order history. Nothing was scheduled. I tried to rationalize it. 2 houses on my side of the street have nearly identical brick fronts, and I'd gotten a straight package myself once. I closed the app and went back to a deadline, pushing the thought to the back of my mind. But 3 days later, it happened again. Same green vest, same empty hands, same 11-second stare before he strolled away at that exact same unhurried pace. My hands were actually shaking when I scrubbed through 6 weeks of stored footage that night. 11 visits in total. Only 4 matched packages I'd actually ordered. The other 7 were empty-handed, all clustered around that same early afternoon window between 1 and 2 o'clock. Every single one ended with that same weird pause at the door before he left. I brought it up with a client the next morning, mostly just making strange small talk before diving into her logo revisions. She laughed and said a similar thing happened at her building with a maintenance worker. It made me feel less crazy for about an hour, until I remembered the guy in her story lost his job over something way less ambiguous than this. I barely slept that night, my phone sitting on the pillow next to me, screen up, waiting for a notification that never came. By morning, I had convinced myself I was overreacting to a guy on a bad route who liked confirming addresses a little too literally. Staying busy with work helped me half believe that for a few days. Until he came back the following Tuesday and made it worse. He crouched down toward the lens this time, close enough that I could count his eyebrow hairs when I zoomed in later. He held that position for almost 30 seconds, longer than any of the previous visits combined. My chest went tight. I sat at my kitchen table, completely still, just watching it live and staring back at my own front door through a screen. I called the delivery company that night, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. The rep cited privacy policies and confirmed a route ran through my street, but she couldn't explain the repeated empty-handed stops. She suggested I call the police if I felt unsafe, which felt oddly serious for a man who hadn't technically done anything yet. I hung up and sat there for a long time, staring at his paused face on my laptop, trying to decide if I was actually in danger or just creeped out. 9 quiet days passed. I started to let my guard down, the way you do when nothing happens long enough to feel normal again. I even brought it up casually with my neighbor across the street while taking out the trash. She hadn't noticed anything on her camera, though she admitted she rarely checked it anyway. Then, on a Thursday evening while I was finishing up a project, the app chimed with a live notification. I grabbed my phone so fast I knocked over my coffee, letting it spread across a stack of proofs I didn't care about anymore. No van on the street this time. No green vest. Just a man in dark jeans and a plain jacket, with one hand pressed flat against my door. He was testing it, the way you test a lock you already figured was weak. I didn't breathe the entire minute he stood there. I just watched the screen instead of my own window, using the camera as a shield, my thumb hovering over the call button the whole time. He looked up into the lens once more before stepping back and walking off at that same unhurried pace. As soon as he was out of frame, I called the police. My voice was cracking as I gave them my address. A patrol car swept through 20 minutes later, headlights flashing across my driveway before heading to the exit. The officer who called me back said they hadn't found anyone on foot in the area. Without a clear threat, there wasn't much they could do besides file a report. Nothing else happened that night, but I stayed up by the kitchen window until the sky turned gray. 2 days later, around 3 a.m., a motion alert jolted me awake. The clip didn't show anyone at the door, just the edge of a shape near my side D, vanishing before the loop finished. I couldn't tell if it was a person or just a shadow cast by a passing car. I sat up with the lamp on until sunrise, gripping my phone like it could actually protect me. 2 weeks of nothing followed. I slowly let my guard down, settling back into normal deliveries, normal work, and normal evenings. I even joked about it with a friend over dinner, pretending it was just a crazy story rather than something that still bothered me. But then I noticed the camera angle had shifted. It was tilted lower than where I'd mounted it 2 years ago, framing my door instead of the street. The app showed no remote adjustments, and nobody had climbed up there in plain daylight. I ripped that camera off the wall myself that night. I bought a new one and mounted it higher under the eave, where no one could reach it without a ladder. For nearly 3 months, everything was fine. Only real packages arrived, left by normal guys in normal uniforms. I started to believe the whole thing had just run its course, the way unexplainable things sometimes quietly do. Then, last week, a courier I'd never seen before knocked on my door. He held out a small padded envelope and waited for a signature like any standard delivery. I signed, said thanks, and closed the door before opening it at the kitchen table. Inside was a single printed photo of my own porch. It was taken from the exact angle of the old camera, timestamped from a night 2 weeks after I had already replaced it and moved a new one. There was no note inside, no name, no return address. I still don't know who sent it, or how they knew I'd moved the camera in the first place. I never mentioned that to anyone. I called the police again, mostly out of habit, and they logged it like everything else. I still check every delivery twice now before opening the door. And some afternoons, when I have nothing scheduled to arrive, I catch myself watching the porch through the new camera, waiting to see if whoever took that photo ever decides to prove they were closer than I want to believe. Subscribe, more is coming.